In July 2024, on a humid evening in Northern Virginia, something happened that terrified power grid operators around the world. A simple lightning arrestor failed on a high-voltage transmission line. It was a minor equipment failure, the kind that usually barely registers. But this line was feeding Data Center Alley, the densest concentration of internet infrastructure on Earth. In milliseconds, the automated protection systems inside dozens of hyperscale data centers interpreted this blip as an existential threat. To save their expensive servers, they all disconnected from the grid at the exact same instant. In the blink of an eye, 1.5 gigawatts of electricity demand evaporated. That's roughly equivalent to turning off the power for the entire city of San Francisco instantly. This massive, sudden drop caused a voltage spike that threatened to crash the entire PJM interconnection, the grid serving 65 million Americans. Power plants across Virginia and Maryland had to emergency throttle their output to prevent a cascading failure. We narrowly avoided a blackout, but it was a wake-up call. We are no longer just talking about the cloud. We are talking about a physical infrastructure crisis where the infinite ambition of artificial intelligence is colliding head-on with the finite limitations of our copper and steel power grid. For the last 15 years, electricity demand in the U.S. was basically flat. Our appliances got more efficient, LED bulbs saved power, and the grid was stable. That era is officially over. You need to understand the fundamental difference between the old internet and the AI internet. When you search for something on Google, it costs about 0.3 watt-hours of energy. But when you ask ChatGPT a question, it consumes about 2.9 watt-hours. That is nearly 10 times the energy per interaction. Now, multiply that by billions of daily users integrating AI into everything from writing emails to coding software. We aren't just building data centers anymore. We are building AI factories. These facilities operate on a scale we haven't seen before. They run flat out 24/7, training models on tens of thousands of GPUs. And here is the kicker. We can build these data centers in 18 months, but it takes 3 to 4 years to get the transformers needed to plug them in, and up to 10 years to build the high-voltage transmission lines to carry the power. We have a massive timing mismatch. The digital world moves at the speed of code, the physical grid moves at the speed of permits and concrete. This isn't a theoretical problem for the future. It's breaking things today. In Northern Virginia, which processes about 70% of the world's internet traffic, the grid is effectively full. Dominion Energy, the local utility, is building a $4.6 billion transmission backbone just to keep up. But because they can't build lines fast enough, we're seeing desperate measures. Virginia regulators considered allowing data centers to run their massive diesel backup generators, machines that are only supposed to be for emergencies, during grid stress events. Residents are essentially facing the prospect of living next to dispersed diesel power plants just so the internet doesn't lag. It's happening globally. In Ireland, data centers are consuming so much power, projected to be 30% of the national grid by 2030, that there is a de facto moratorium on new grid connections in Dublin until 2028. To get around this, companies are looking at islanded data centers that are literally disconnected from the national grid, running entirely on their own on-site natural gas power plants. There's a hidden economic cost here, too. The U.S. is trying to bring manufacturing back home. Think of the CHIPS Act and new battery factories. But those factories need power, and they are competing for the same grid connections as AI data centers. The data is showing a divergence. In early 2025, while data center construction spending surged 18%, new factory construction spending actually dropped by 2.5%. Why? Because big tech has higher margins. They can pay premiums for power that a steel mill or a battery plant simply can't afford. AI is effectively crowding out the reindustrialization of the economy because it's swallowing the available power capacity. This brings us to the most controversial part of the story: the dirty secret of AI. Every major tech company has a net zero by 2030 pledge. But physics doesn't care about marketing because renewables like wind and solar are intermittent. The sun doesn't always shine. And AI training requires perfect 24/7 uptime. Utilities are doing the one thing climate scientists told them not to do. They are keeping coal plants alive. Across the U.S., utilities are delaying the retirement of coal plants explicitly because of data center demand. In Virginia, Dominion delayed the retirement of the Clover Power Station until at least 2045. In Wisconsin, Alliant Energy pushed back the closure of its Columbia Energy Center. In Georgia, Southern Company's CEO explicitly said, "We're going to extend coal plants as long as we can," citing the need to win the AI race. And it's not just coal. There is a massive gas rush. New natural gas plants are being proposed specifically to feed data centers. In Indiana, NIPSCO even created a subsidiary to build a gas plant solely for a data center client. Tech companies often report market-based emissions, where they buy green credits to offset their carbon. But if you look at location-based emissions, what is actually happening on the grid where they operate, the numbers are skyrocketing. Microsoft's location-based emissions rose 130% over 4 years because the grids they rely on are burning more carbon to keep their servers running. So, is there a solution that doesn't boil the planet? Big Tech thinks the answer is nuclear. We are seeing a historic pivot. Microsoft signed a deal to restart Unit 1 at 3 Mile Island. Yes, the site of the famous accident. They are paying a huge premium to bring that reactor back online, just for their data centers. Meanwhile, Amazon and Google are betting on the future: small modular reactors, or SMRs. Google signed a deal with Kairos Power, and Amazon is investing in X-Energy. The idea is to mass-produce smaller, safer reactors that can be dropped right next to data centers. It sounds perfect, but here is the reality check. SMRs are unproven at commercial scale. The first ones might come online in the early 2030s, but the AI boom is happening now. We have a gap of about 5 to 7 years where nuclear can't save us, and that gap is being filled by gas and coal. Now, you might be wondering, if Google and Microsoft need all this power, they're paying for the upgrades, right? Well, it's complicated. In the US, grid upgrades are often paid for by all ratepayers. In the PJM region, which covers 13 states, the cost of securing capacity recently jumped from $2.2 billion to $14.7 billion in a single auction. Why? Because demand is spiking and supply is tight. Analysts estimate that residential electricity bills in places like Western Maryland could go up by $18 a month and $16 a month in Ohio, purely due to these rising capacity costs. You are effectively subsidizing the infrastructure for the AI revolution through your monthly utility bill. Grid operators are trying to fight back. PJM proposed a new rule called non-coincident peak load. Basically, it tells data centers, if you want to avoid massive fees, you have to agree to be the first ones cut off during an emergency, or you have to bring your own power plant to the party. It's an attempt to force big tech to pay for their own reliability, but it's a massive political battle. There is a silver lining. We are starting to see the emergence of grid interactive data centers. Data centers have massive batteries for backup. Usually these just sit there doing nothing, but Microsoft and Google are testing systems where these batteries help stabilize the grid. In Dublin, Microsoft's batteries provide frequency response. If the grid wobbles, the data center stabilizes it instantly. Google is even shifting workloads. If the grid in Virginia is stressed, they can move non-urgent training tasks to a data center in Oregon or Finland, where power is cheap and green. If they can figure this out at scale, data centers could actually help the grid rather than break. The era of infinite, cheap, invisible power for the internet is over. We are entering a decade of friction. We're going to see moratoriums, higher bills, and a lot of political fighting over who gets access to the grid. But we're also going to see innovation. The constraint of energy might force AI to become more efficient. It might finally jumpstart the nuclear industry. The question is no longer just, is the AI model smart? The question is, do we have the electrons to run it? Let me know in the comments. Would you pay higher electric bills to support faster AI? See you next time.